Joining me now, Morgan Ortagus, Tammy Bruce, former Senator Scott Brown, and former presidential candidate Herman Cain. Guys, I want to talk about this. A lot of angles here, timing of this speech, but also the substance of it. And Herman Cain, to you, you ran a race. It was an ugly race. A lot of accusations were thrown at you. You were forced to leave the race. What do you make of what happened today? And Mitt Romney, the tack that he's taking?
Well, Mitt Romney didn't hesitate to invoke Reagan when he talked about a time for choosing. But he didn't invoke Reagan's 11th Commandment, thou shalt not criticize a fellow Republican. And he broke that rule. Secondly, many of the things that he threw out there about Trump are exaggerations. Maybe some of them are true, but a lot of them are out of context. So I, quite frankly, did not respect that he took this approach. My third point, Charles, is that many of the things that he said in his speech were from the talking points for Marco Rubio. That was as clear as day because Marco Rubio is desperate to win Florida. And this is a Hail Mary pass on the part of the Rubio campaign with the help of Romney to try to persuade voters in Florida.
Senator Brown, there's no doubt it was a Hail Mary pass for maybe Rubio, but certainly the entire establishment. I thought of all the things he said when he said dishonesty is a Donald Trump hallmark. Again, I think Herman Cain is right. We're going to hear all of these things over and over again going into November. It seems like it was I don't know, it seems like he threw a hand grenade inside the tent and everyone's a victim.
Well, first of all, it was definitely a coordinated effort, whether it's with Rubio or, others who are not happy with what's happening. Listen, I know Mitt Romney. We have a very long and strong relationship. I have a lot of respect for him, and he's entitled to say what he wants to say. That being said, had he endorsed somebody at the end, it would have made a little bit more sense. But basically saying, hey, anybody but Trump. Well, with all due respect, if it is Trump, then what, Mitt? Because right now he's doing a couple of things. He's bringing in a tremendous amount of people into the equation. They may not agree with him on everything, but I believe what you saw today is a sign of desperation by the so-called establishment. But more importantly, I think it's going to have a boomerang effect because I had at least 100 people personally call me today and say, you know what, I'm angry. And I'm going to go out and put a sign in my yard now. Enough is enough. And one final thing, I know I'm taking an extra minute, is you have the leadership in the Senate saying, we're not going to do a SCOTUS pick because, we need to have the people make a decision. The people make a decision. Well, right. The people are deciding that they want Donald Trump, but that's not good enough for the establishment. And it's a little bit frustrating, to be honest with you.
Tammy, anger is what's been driving the narrative, in fact, just throughout this political season on both sides of the aisle. But you have to wonder because Mitt Romney made sure he hit Donald Trump on a prolonged recession, ballooning deficits, national security. He questioned his business success. He hit him on every single level today.
He did. He gave Hillary Clinton about a half a dozen ads. It was an extraordinary situation. Look, I admire the Romneys, both of them, very much. I'm sympathetic to criticism about Donald Trump. But this was very strange because in addition to the criticism of what is now perhaps the likely nominee, his answer, as Senator Brown noted, there was no answer. There was no endorsement. There was no real solution. In fact, his suggestion that people vote for differently in each state based on who could beat Mr. Trump sets up gridlock. And that, of course, is also not a situation that the American people want. And I don't know who they think is going to rally around the establishment.
Clear, I want to remind the audience, essentially what Mitt Romney said is if you're in a state where the second to Trump in the polls, whoever that is, vote for them. So in Florida, it would be Rubio. In a different state, it might be Cruz. But whatever you do, sabotage the system. And no one has enough delegates so that when you get to the nomination, there has to be a broker nomination.
Well, that's exactly it. And this is, look, the American people have to trust their consciences. But I was very disappointed at this, and this certainly was not a solution today.
I will say, though, Morgan, a lot of pro-Cruz and pro-Rubio tweets I saw today said, finally someone is at least bringing this up. Why hasn't the media talked about some of the failures of a Donald Trump? Some of these other things that were brought up. It's never brought up. Some people were actually happy that he brought them up today. Was it a good move on his part?
I think that remains to be seen. I think the people who support Donald Trump actively are going to continue to support Donald Trump.
So then what was the point of him doing this then?
Well, I have to say, as someone who clearly, I had someone else in the primary that I supported that I talked a lot about on your show, the thing that pained me about the press conference is I thought, where was this 6 months ago? Donald Trump has been leading in the polls since the summer. So there's been ample opportunity, and quite frankly, Jeb Bush was out on a limb by himself in the fall going after Trump. So I think it's a little bit arrogant arrogant of the establishment to think that they're going to sabotage him now, when if they wanted to go against him and talk about his record, which I think everybody's record is fair game, that should have happened in the fall. What I think needs to happen now is if Donald Trump wants to be the nominee of the Republican Party, he needs to find a way to unite the party, which is what Mitt Romney had to do, which is what John McCain had to do whenever they get close to being the presumptive nominee.
You know, Herman Cain, I guess the question is, where was this 6 months ago, probably underscores the fact that the establishment is always behind the ball. and now they're finally throwing their Hail Mary that you talked about earlier. But what do you make of some of the, when we get away from the personal attacks, when he talked about Trump's policies, you're a businessman. I mean, would he create a trade war? Would we have a prolonged recession? Would he balloon deficits? Would national security be at risk?
National security would not be at risk. And this is where I believe Mitt Romney made the most exaggerations. Number one, we would not go into a deep recession with Trump's tax replacement plan. Secondly, Trump's tax plan is not what Mitt Romney made it out to be. I know for a fact, Charles, that when I introduced my 999 plan, one of these hack organizations changed the assumptions in order to be able to get the result that they wanted. I have looked at Trump's tax plan. It will not put us in a recession. And secondly, it's not going to put us in some sort of trade war because there's more than one way to skin a tariff. Mitt Romney simply made one assumption about what would happen with respect to tariffs, and I believe all of that was misleading. Now, let me make one more quick point.
Sure.
Go back to what Scott Brown said about not wanting to put a nominee into the Supreme Court right now. Let the people decide. The people are deciding so far that they like Trump, but the establishment wants a selection process rather than an election process, which Mike Huckabee pointed out yesterday.